Things off. My name is Jason Colyer. I'm a support operations manager here at GitLab, and today we're going to go over managing agent signatures via the repo, the sync repo. So let's share my screen and I'll get started here. So this is the sync repo for the global instance. The one for US Federal is going to look very, very similar, maybe some slight tweaks in the formatting used because they're two different instances. But generally speaking, what we have here is our repo, and this is where we tend to manage it. So to start, let me kind of go over how this works, and then we'll go into actually making changes. So we've got some files here, but all of this kind of runs through CI/CD. It has a stage where we specify Ruby 2.6 as the image. It only has one stage, the run stage. It has a cache path of vendor Ruby to cache the gems and stuff. We have a before script where it specifies to output ruby-v to get the Ruby version. We install bundler, and then we run the bundle function to install all the other required gems. The only job this will run is the sync signatures job, which of course will run on a schedule and just runs the run script. The run script, nothing very fancy with it. All it does is require the agent signatures file and then calls the run function. So where a lot of this is actually going to come from is this agent signatures file. And here we specify a class of agent signatures. This requires the YAML and the Zendesk API gems or libraries, depending on how you want to define the YAML stuff. But first we start by defining a client, in this case, the Zendesk API client. We're passing it the URL, username, token, retry, and then we're returning logger to false just to prevent the overly verbose wording that it will use. We also define a GitLab client. This will use a new Faraday connection using whatever default adapter is available. It's going to make sure the request is URL encoded, and it's going to pass the private token header in there using our GitLab token. Now we also specify the GitLab request function. What this does is take the HTTP method, the endpoint, and any parameters we want to pass into it. And it's going to call the public send function of the client, which is Faraday, using that information. And then it's going to come back with whatever response it has and safe load it using YAML. We're passing the date in there. That way it knows to parse dates as dates. And then we have the get support team function. This is basically calling a URL to the support team YAML file. And we're just calling the GitLab request, calling a get request with URL. Basically, we just want the raw YAML file that is stored there. And of course, YAML is going to parse that and have it for us so that we have our support team YAML file loaded in there as a Ruby object. So we're good to go. There's the agents function, which is just setting the agent's global variable to get support team YAML, which again is just going to get the support team YAML and parse it into Ruby for us. The signature, we read the data signature.txt file. We'll go into that in a bit. And then there's the run function, which is pretty much going to go through every agent that we have from that support team YAML file. It's going to tell us it's updating that agent, and then it's going to run the update signature function using the agent, and then it's going to tell us it's done. That's all the run function really does. All the update signature function in of itself does is call the Zendesk API to update the user signature, update the user specifically, but all we're really tweaking is a few things of the user. And what that'll do is get an update object using the agent information. And the update object is going to have the agent's Zendesk ID, their name, the signature that we'll define down below. And then we're also going to pass it the GitLab username and GitLab user ID. These are used on some other triggers and automation. So it's good to have that pre-populated for agents. Now the actual agent signature itself, it's going to look to see if the agent has any salutations. This is something they can define in the support team YAML file, things like have a nice day, warmest regards, et cetera, et cetera. There's a function for that. We'll go over that in a bit. After the salutation, it's going to have the agent's name, their title, and then GitLab support, link to GitLab support. And then we're going to have the feedback form, which is something newer to the agent signatures. Now, the agent's title is literally just what their title is defined as in the support team YAML. The feedback form itself, we've basically got this block of text here that links to this feedback form we're currently using. This will make sure it appends it at the end of the agent signature so that it's present on every reply from a GitLab agent. The salutation itself, it's going to return blank if there is no salutations, but if there is one, it's going to pull a random one for the day. It doesn't always use the same one. It runs the sample function. For those familiar in coding, yes, being truly random in code is not really easy or simple, but I just use the sample function. It feels good enough for this case. So all that will run and update the agent signatures. The other component to know here is that agent signatures data file. This is really where we just kind of put information if we want it there. So we have this here, but we're not actually using that. If we actually go back to that, that agents file, you'll notice while we have a function to read that, we don't actually use it in the signature itself. This is by intention. It was something we tried, we didn't like. We've kept it there in case we ever want to go back or use other kind of messaging for that. Now, the way all of this works is it runs on a daily CI/CD schedule that we've got set in here. It's going to run every 24 hours and sync these. And if you look at this, it runs every day at midnight UTC time. In this, we pass the variables that we need to pass. That's all there really is to agent signatures itself and how it works. So if you were to need to make a change as of right now, you're going to be doing it via the agent signatures.rb file in the lib folder. And basically what you're normally going to change is the formatting used here. We might sync some other fields or something along those lines. So you might have to update the update object, or we might decide not to use the feedback form, or et cetera, et cetera. It's going to depend on what the request is, but basically you're going to make the edit here, click the web IDE or however you prefer to edit, make the edit, create an MR, get it approved, get it reviewed by the requester, get it merged. That's basically the process for making a change to the agent signature. Because it runs once a day, we tend to have the viewpoint of it's fine, it'll run the next day after an implementation. But in the off chance that you do need to run this immediately, you can just go to CI/CD schedules and click the play button here and it'll run it immediately. That's all there really is to it. I hope you found this educational and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.